Officer Derek Mills sat in his patrol car at a red light. He was drinking coffee from a paper cup. The coffee was cold now, but he didn't care. He drank it anyway. His partner, Officer Sarah Chen, sat in the passenger seat. She was looking at her phone, checking their assigned route for the day. Derek was 34 years old. He had been a police officer for 5 years. In those 5 years, he had received 17 complaints from citizens. Most of them said the same things. They said he was too aggressive. They said he made assumptions. They said he treated people unfairly, but Derek didn't think he did anything wrong. He thought people were too sensitive. He thought they didn't understand how hard his job was. He thought they should respect him more. Sarah was different. She was only 23 years old. She had graduated from the police academy just 3 months ago. Everything was still new to her. She was still learning. She tried to do everything by the book. She wanted to be a good officer. Sometimes Sarah worried about her partner. She noticed how Derek talked about certain neighborhoods. She noticed how he treated certain people. But she was new. She was afraid to speak up. She didn't want to cause problems. The radio on their dashboard crackled to life. A voice came through, female and professional. Unit 17, we have a call for you. Suspicious person reported in the Oakmont Hills area, 2847 Maple Drive. Anonymous caller reports someone who doesn't belong in the neighborhood. Possible burglary suspect. Derek grabbed the radio immediately. His eyes lit up with interest. Unit 17 responding. Out of 5 minutes. He put the coffee cup in the holder and turned the steering wheel hard. The light was still red, but he turned on his lights and siren. The car lurched forward. Sarah grabbed the door handle to steady herself. Oakmont Hills is a nice neighborhood, she said. Probably just someone visiting family. Derek shook his head. You're too trusting. That's going to get you hurt one day. He pressed harder on the gas pedal. The car went faster. What did the caller say exactly? Sarah asked. She was trying to get more information. That's what their training taught them to do. Get the facts first. Someone who doesn't belong, Derek repeated. He said it like those words explained everything. Sarah frowned. But what does that mean? What were they doing that was suspicious? Derek glanced at her with annoyance. Look, rookie, you need to learn to read between the lines. Oakmont Hills is an expensive neighborhood. Houses there cost $500,000 or more. If someone doesn't belong, they don't belong. Trust me on this. Sarah felt uncomfortable. Something about Derek's tone bothered her, but she didn't know what to say. She was still so new. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe she just didn't understand yet. They drove through 3 red lights. Cars pulled over to let them pass. The siren wailed loudly. Derek had a small smile on his face. He always liked responding to calls with the lights and siren on. It made him feel important. It made him feel powerful. Probably some punk casing houses, Derek muttered, seeing what he can steal. These criminals think they're so smart. They think they can just walk into nice neighborhoods like they own the place. The call said suspicious person. Sarah pointed out. It didn't say anyone was breaking in. Maybe they're just lost. Or maybe they live there, Derek laughed. It was not a kind laugh. In Oakmont Hills? I doubt it. I've been patrolling that area for 3 years. I know who belongs there and who doesn't. Sarah wanted to ask what he meant by that, but something stopped her. She had a feeling she wouldn't like the answer. They turned onto Maple Drive. Derek slowed down a little, looking at house numbers. The houses here were beautiful. Big lawns, 2-car garages, expensive cars in the driveways. Everything looked clean and perfect. There, Derek said, pointing. 2847 Sarah looked. She saw a nice 2-story house with a well-kept yard. In the driveway, there was a black SUV. Next to the SUV stood a man. He was washing the car. He had a bucket and a hose. He looked completely normal. He looked like he was just doing weekend chores. That's the suspicious person? Sarah asked. She couldn't hide the doubt in her voice. That's him, Derek said firmly. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard. Sarah looked again. The man was wearing regular clothes. Jeans and a t-shirt. Old sneakers. He was just standing there washing his car. In his own driveway. Derek, he's just washing his car. Maybe he lives here. Or maybe he's washing a car he just stole, Derek shot back. Or maybe he broke into the house and he's loading up stuff to steal. We need to check it out. Should we run the plates first? Sarah suggested. That was standard procedure. If they ran the license plate, they could see who owned the car. They could see if it was registered to this address. It would take 30 seconds, no time for that, Derek said. He was already pulling into the driveway. We need to secure the scene. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Something about this felt wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. But Derek was her training officer. She was supposed to follow his lead. She was supposed to trust his experience. The patrol car's tires squealed as Derek hit the brakes. The car stopped suddenly just a few feet from the man. The sound was loud and aggressive. It made Sarah jump in her seat. The man looked up. He seemed confused. He set down his sponge carefully. He just stood there waiting. He didn't run. He didn't look scared. He just looked confused. Across the street, an older Asian woman was in her garden. She looked over at them. Down the block, Sarah saw other people noticing too. Some of them stopped what they were doing to watch. Remember, Derek said quietly to Sarah. Let me do the talking. You watch for any sudden movements. These situations can go bad fast. Sarah nodded, but her chest felt tight. This didn't feel like a dangerous situation. This felt like a man washing his car on a Sunday morning. Derek opened his door and stepped out. Before his feet even touched the ground, he was already shouting, "Hey, what are you doing here?" The man looked startled. "I'm sorry, officer. Is there a problem?" "I asked you a question." Derek's voice was loud and harsh. "What are you doing here?" "Whose car is this?" Sarah got out of the car more slowly. She kept her hand near her radio. Not near her weapon. Just near her radio. That's what felt appropriate. The man stayed calm. He spoke clearly and politely. "This is my car, officer. I'm washing it. I live here. This is my house." Derek walked closer. His posture was aggressive. He was trying to intimidate the man. Sarah could see it. She had seen Derek do this before with other people. "Sure you do. Let me guess, you're visiting family, right? Or maybe you're the gardener." "No, sir," the man said patiently. "I live here. My family and I moved in 6 weeks ago." "Uh-huh." Derek didn't sound convinced. He sounded suspicious and mean. "Where's your ID? Show me some identification right now." The man nodded slowly. "Of course, officer. My wallet is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now, okay? Keep your hands where I can see them." Derek shouted suddenly. His hand moved toward his belt. Toward his gun, the man froze. His hands came up slowly, palms facing Derek. "I'm just reaching for my wallet like you asked, officer. I'm not doing anything wrong." Sarah's heart was pounding. This was escalating too fast. Way too fast. The man was cooperating. He was being polite. There was no reason for Derek to be so aggressive. She stepped forward. "Derek, maybe we should stay back, Chen." Derek snapped at her. "I've got this." Across the street, the Asian woman was watching them. She had her phone in her hand. Sarah saw other neighbors coming out of their houses now. Some of them had phones too. They were recording. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. This was wrong. This was all wrong. But she didn't know what to do. She was just a rookie. Derek was her training officer. If she challenged him, she could lose her job. She could get a reputation as difficult. She could ruin her career before it even started. The man moved very slowly. He reached toward his back pocket with 2 fingers. He was being so careful, so cautious. He pulled out a brown leather wallet. He held it up so Derek could see it clearly. "I'm going to open this and show you my ID," the man said. His voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the tension in it now. He was scared. He was trying not to show it, but he was scared. Derek snatched the wallet from the man's hand. He opened it roughly. Cards fell out onto the driveway. A credit card. A library card. A photo of a young girl. Derek barely looked at anything. He pulled out a driver's license and a military ID card. He glanced at them for only a second. Then he threw them on the ground. "These could be fake," Derek said. "Anyone can make fake IDs these days." Sarah couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Derek, his license shows this address. It says, 'I said I've got this, Chen.'" Derek turned to glare at her. His face was red. His eyes were angry. The man spoke again, still calm but firmer now. "Officer, I've shown you my identification. I've answered your questions. I've done everything you've asked. What is this about?" Derek turned back to him. "This is about you not belonging in this neighborhood. This is about a report of suspicious activity. This is about you matching the description of a burglary suspect." "What description?" the man asked. "What suspect? I haven't done anything wrong." More neighbors were gathering now. Sarah counted at least 7 people watching. Most of them had their phones out. They were all recording. This was going to be all over social media by tonight. Sarah knew it. This was going to be a disaster. The colonel stood in his driveway looking at the angry police officer in front of him. His military training told him to stay calm. Stay in control. Don't escalate the situation. But his heart was pounding. His hands wanted to shake, but he wouldn't let them. Derek stepped even closer. He was invading the colonel's personal space on purpose. It was a tactic meant to intimidate. I said, sit down on that curb now. This is your last warning. The colonel took a slow breath. He looked at the curb. He looked at his beautiful house. He thought about his wife inside, probably wondering what was happening. He thought about his daughter sleeping upstairs. He thought about all the times he had defended this country, all the times he had put his life on the line, and now he was being treated like a criminal in his own driveway. Officer, he said quietly, I understand you're doing your job, but I've shown you my identification. I've told you I live here. I haven't done anything wrong. There's no reason for me to sit on the curb like a criminal. You match the description of a burglary suspect, Derek shouted. Spit flew from his mouth. His face was red and angry. What description? The colonel asked. He kept his voice level and calm. What exactly is the description? Can you tell me that? Derek hesitated, just for a second. It was clear he didn't have a real description. The anonymous call had been vague, too vague. But Derek wasn't going to admit that. Male, average height, wearing dark clothing, Derek said. But even as he said it, the colonel was wearing a gray shirt. Not dark clothing. And half the men in America matched that description anyway. I see, the colonel said. And how many burglaries have been reported in this neighborhood recently? Derek's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. Your concern is following my orders. Mrs. Chen had walked to the edge of her yard now. She called out, Officer, that man lives there. He and his family moved in last month. I met them. They're wonderful people. Derek turned toward her. Ma'am, you need to step back and stay out of this. This is police business, but he lives there, Mrs. Chen insisted. You're making a mistake. Ma'am, if you don't step back right now, I'll arrest you for interfering with a police investigation. Derek's hand moved to the handcuffs on his belt. Mrs. Chen looked shocked. She took a step back, but she didn't go inside. She stayed where she was, her phone held up, recording everything. The colonel felt anger rising in his chest. They were threatening a kind old woman who was just trying to help. This was beyond wrong. This was abuse of power. Sarah moved closer to her partner. She spoke quietly, trying not to be heard by everyone watching. Derek, maybe we should wait for the supervisor. We can check his ID more carefully. We can verify. I don't need a supervisor to tell me how to do my job. Derek snapped at her. Then he turned back to the colonel. For the last time, sit on that curb or I will physically put you there. The colonel looked into Derek's eyes. He saw anger there, but he saw something else too. He saw fear. Derek was afraid. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of looking foolish. Afraid of losing control. That fear made him dangerous. The colonel made a decision. He didn't want his wife to see violence. He didn't want his daughter to wake up and look out the window to see her father being hurt. He didn't want to give this officer any excuse to use his weapon, so he walked slowly to the curb and sat down. The concrete was hard and cold. He could feel the rough surface through his jeans. His knees came up awkwardly. This position was meant to be humiliating. It was meant to make him feel small, powerless. But the colonel sat with his back straight, his head held high. Even sitting on a curb in his own driveway, he maintained his dignity. The neighbors were all watching now. At least 12 people were visible. More were probably watching from their windows. The teenage son of Mr. Johnson came running down the street with his phone out, recording everything. This is crazy, the teenager shouted. He lives there. Everyone knows he lives there. Derek ignored them all. He bent down and picked up the colonel's wallet from the ground. Cards were still scattered on the driveway. Derek stepped on the photo of the colonel's daughter as he walked. He didn't even notice. Sarah quietly picked up the scattered cards. She saw the military ID. She actually looked at it this time. Her eyes went wide. She saw the rank, Colonel. She saw the commendations listed. Distinguished Service Medal, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit. Derek, she said urgently. Derek, you need to see this. But Derek wasn't listening. He was going through the wallet roughly, pulling out credit cards, looking at receipts. He was looking for anything that would prove he was right. Anything that would justify his actions. He found the driver's license again. This time he actually read the address. 2847 Maple Drive. The same address they were standing at. His face flickered with doubt for just a moment. Then he threw the wallet on the ground. Anyone can fake a driver's license. Anyone can steal a wallet. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Derek, his name matches the ID, the address matches. And look at this. She held up the military ID. He's a colonel in the army, we need to… Could be fake? Derek said stubbornly. Do you know how many people fake military IDs? It's a big problem. The front door of the house opened. The colonel's wife, Patricia, stepped out. She was still wearing her apron. Her face was confused and frightened. James, what's happening? Why are the police here? The colonel looked at his wife. His heart broke a little. He didn't want her to see this. It's okay, honey. Just a misunderstanding. Go back inside. Derek whirled around. Ma'am, step back inside the house. Now Patricia froze on the doorstep. This is my house. That's my husband. What's going on? Ma'am, I will not tell you again. Get back inside or I will arrest you for obstruction. Derek's hand was on his handcuffs again. The colonel stood up quickly. Don't you dare talk to my wife that way. Sit back down. Derek screamed. His hand moved from his handcuffs to his gun. He didn't draw it, but his hand was on the handle. Sit down right now or I will consider you a threat. Time seemed to slow down. Everyone watching held their breath. Sarah's hand went to her own weapon, but she wasn't sure what she was supposed to do. Was she supposed to back up Derek? Or was she supposed to stop him? The colonel looked at the hand on the gun. He had been in war zones. He had been shot at by enemies. He had faced down armed insurgents. But this was different. This was in his own driveway, in front of his own house, in the country he had spent 20 years defending. He sat back down on the curb, slowly, carefully, his hands visible the entire time. Patricia had tears running down her face. Please, she said to Derek, please, there's been a mistake. He lives here. We live here. Our daughter is sleeping upstairs, please. Ma'am, I won't ask again. Derek shouted. Patricia looked at her husband. The colonel nodded at her. Go inside, his eyes said. It's safer inside. Patricia understood. She went back into the house, but she didn't close the door all the way. She stood just inside, watching through the crack, her phone in her hand calling someone. Mr. Williams from down the street walked closer. He was an older white man, retired, maybe 70 years old. Officer, I've lived on this street for 25 years. That man and his family moved in 6 weeks ago. They're good people. They keep their yard nice. They're quiet. There's no problem here. Derek turned his anger toward Mr. Williams. Sir, you need to back up right now. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Mr. Williams said firmly. I know what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing is wrong. That's it. Derek pulled out his handcuffs. He started walking toward Mr. Williams. You're under arrest for obstruction and interfering with police business. Sarah finally snapped into action. She stepped between Derek and Mr. Williams. Derek, stop. We have multiple witnesses saying he lives here. We have his ID showing this address. We need to wait for the supervisor. Get out of my way, Chen. Derek pushed past her. The colonel stood up again. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't let an innocent old man get arrested because of him. Officer, please. I'll do whatever you want. Just leave these people alone. This is about me, not them. Derek spun around, his face twisted with rage. I said sit down. He rushed back toward the colonel. For a moment it looked like he might actually tackle him. Sarah ran forward, grabbing Derek's arm. Derek, the supervisor is almost here. Just wait. Derek shook her off, but he stopped. He was breathing hard. His face was sweaty. He looked around at all the phones recording him, at all the witnesses watching. Some part of his brain must have realized he had gone too far. The colonel sat back down on the curb for the third time. His knees hurt now. His back hurt. But more than that, his heart hurt. His pride hurt. His sense of justice hurt. He had jumped out of airplanes for this country. He had led soldiers into danger. He had given orders that saved lives. He had medals and commendations. He had served with honor and courage. And now he was sitting on a curb in his own driveway being treated like trash. The teenage boy who was recording came closer. Sir, He said to the colonel, "I'm getting all of this. Everyone is recording. The truth is going to come out." The colonel nodded slightly. He didn't trust himself to speak. If he spoke now, his voice might crack. And he refused to let that happen. He refused to give Derek that satisfaction. In the distance, they could all hear another police siren. The supervisor was coming. Sarah looked relieved. The neighbors looked hopeful. Derek looked angry and defensive, and the colonel just sat there on the curb, waiting. Waiting for someone with sense to arrive. Waiting for this nightmare to end. Waiting to see if justice still existed in the country he had given so much to protect. The siren got louder, closer. The supervisor was almost there. But the damage was already done. The humiliation was already complete. And everyone in the neighborhood had seen it happen. The second police car turned onto Maple Drive with its lights flashing but no siren. The sudden silence made the moment feel heavier somehow, more serious. Everyone on the street seemed to hold their breath. The colonel remained sitting on the curb. His back was still straight. His head was still up. But inside he felt something breaking. Not breaking from fear, breaking from disappointment, from disillusionment. He had always believed in the system. He had always trusted that right would win over wrong. Now he wasn't so sure. Derek stood near him, arms crossed over his chest. He was trying to look confident, trying to look like he was in control, but sweat was running down his face. His jaw was clenched tight. He knew the supervisor was coming, and somewhere deep down he knew he had made mistakes. Sarah stood a few feet away. She looked miserable. Her first real incident as a police officer, and it was turning into a disaster. She had tried to stop Derek. She had called for the supervisor, but she felt like she hadn't done enough. She felt guilty. The neighbors had formed a semicircle around the scene now. At least 15 people were visible. Some stood in their yards. Some stood on the sidewalk. All of them were watching. Many were still recording on their phones. Mrs. Chen was talking quietly to Mr. Williams, both of them shaking their heads in disgust. The teenage boy, Tommy Johnson, had moved closer to the colonel. He was maybe 16 years old, tall and skinny with braces on his teeth. His phone was held up steady, capturing everything. "Sir," he whispered to the colonel, "my mom teaches at the high school. She teaches us about civil rights. This is exactly what she talks about. This is wrong." The colonel glanced at the boy and gave him a tiny nod. He appreciated the support, but he couldn't speak, not yet. His emotions were too close to the surface. If he spoke now, he might lose control. And he refused to lose control. That was what Derek wanted. That was what would make Derek feel justified. The supervisor's car door opened. A woman stepped out. She was in her early 40s, Hispanic, with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was crisp and clean. Her badge gleamed in the sunlight. She wore sergeant stripes on her sleeve. This was Sergeant Lisa Rodriguez. She had been with the police department for 15 years. She had a reputation for being fair but firm. She didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone, not from citizens and not from her fellow officers. Lisa looked at the scene in front of her. She took it all in with sharp, intelligent eyes. A well-dressed man sitting on a curb, a crowd of neighbors watching and recording, an older officer standing with his arms crossed defensively, a young rookie officer who looked like she wanted to disappear into the ground. Lisa's expression didn't change, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. This looked bad. This looked very bad. She walked toward Derek first. "Officer Mills, what's the situation?" Derek straightened up, trying to sound official. "Sergeant, we responded to a call about a suspicious person in the neighborhood. When we arrived, we found this individual," he pointed at the colonel, "loitering around this property. He claimed to live here, but his story didn't add up. He was uncooperative and resistant. I detained him for questioning." Lisa listened without interrupting. Then she looked at the colonel sitting on the curb. She looked at the house behind him. She looked at the SUV in the driveway. She looked at all the neighbors watching. "Did you run the license plate on that vehicle?" Lisa asked. Derek hesitated. "No, Sergeant. There wasn't time. We needed to secure the scene first." Lisa's jaw tightened slightly. That was a bad sign. "Did you check the registration on the house?" "Not yet, Sergeant. Like I said, we were securing. Did you verify his identification?" Derek shifted his weight. His ID could be fake. "Anyone can—" "That's not what I asked, Officer Mills." Lisa's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Did you verify his identification? Did you call it into dispatch? Did you run his name through the system? Derek's face was getting red again. No, Sergeant. But where is his identification now? Derek pointed at the ground. The wallet was lying on the driveway. Cards were scattered around it. The photo of the colonel's daughter was face down in a puddle of soapy water. Lisa's expression hardened. She walked over and carefully picked up the wallet. She picked up each card, wiping them off gently. She picked up the photo of the little girl and dried it carefully on her own uniform sleeve. Then she found the military ID. Lisa looked at it for a long moment. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the colonel. She looked back at the ID. She turned it over to see the back where his commendations were listed. Her face went from surprised to angry in about 2 seconds. She walked over to where the colonel sat. She stood in front of him, and when she spoke, her voice was respectful. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Rodriguez. Would you please stand up?" The colonel looked at her. He saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen in Derek's. He saw respect. He saw understanding. He saw anger, but not anger at him. Anger about what had been done to him. He stood up slowly. His knees cracked a little. He had been sitting on that curb for almost 15 minutes. It felt like hours. "Sir," Lisa said, "I apologize for this situation. I need to ask you some questions, but first, is this your home?" "Yes, Sergeant," the colonel said. His voice was steady now, strong. "My family and I moved here 6 weeks ago. And this is your vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am. I was washing it when the officers arrived." Lisa held up the military ID. "And this is you? Colonel James Patterson, United States Army?" "Yes, ma'am." Lisa looked at Derek. If looks could kill, Derek would have been dead on the spot. "Officer Mills, step over here, please." Derek walked over, trying to maintain his confident posture, but it was crumbling. "This man is a colonel in the United States Army," Lisa said quietly, but her voice was shaking with controlled anger. "Did you not see his military ID?" "I saw it," Derek said defensively. "But like I said, those can be faked. Did you verify it? Did you call it in? Did you do any actual police work? Or did you just decide based on looking at him that he didn't belong in this neighborhood?" Derek's mouth opened and closed. He had no good answer. Lisa turned to Sarah. "Officer Chen, what's your assessment of the situation?" Sarah swallowed hard. This was her moment. She could back up Derek and protect her partner. Or she could tell the truth. Her career hung in the balance. She chose the truth. "Sergeant, I advised Officer Mills multiple times to verify the identification. I suggested running the license plate. I asked him to wait for a supervisor. He refused. The colonel has been cooperative throughout this entire encounter. Multiple neighbors have confirmed that he lives here. In my opinion, there was no reason to detain him." Derek's face went white, then red. He glared at Sarah with pure hatred. Lisa nodded slowly. "Officer Mills, return to your vehicle and wait there. Do not leave. Do not touch anything. We will discuss this further." "But Sergeant..." "That was not a request, Officer Mills. That was an order." Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but even he wasn't stupid enough to disobey a direct order from a supervisor in front of 15 witnesses with cameras. He walked back to his patrol car, his shoulders hunched, his face burning with shame and anger. Lisa turned back to the colonel. She held out his wallet and cards. "Sir, again, I deeply apologize. This should never have happened." The colonel took his wallet. He looked at the picture of his daughter. The water had smudged it a little. He felt a fresh wave of anger, but he kept it controlled. "Sergeant, I've been stopped 3 times in this neighborhood. 3 times in 6 weeks. This is the 3rd time I've been asked to prove I belong in my own home." Lisa's face showed shock. 3 times? "Yes, ma'am. The first time was 2 weeks after we moved in. I was checking my mailbox at the end of my driveway. A patrol car stopped and asked what I was doing. The second time was 3 weeks ago. I was bringing in groceries from my car. Another patrol car stopped and questioned me. And now this." Lisa pulled out a small notebook. "Do you remember the dates? The officers' names?" "I remember the dates. I don't remember the names, but I'm sure the department has records of the stops." "We do." Lisa wrote quickly in her notebook. "Sir, I promise you this will be investigated fully." Mrs. Chen walked forward. She had been waiting for the right moment. "Sergeant, I'm Linda Chen. I've lived on this street for 30 years. I saw everything. That officer, She pointed at Derek's car. Was aggressive from the moment he arrived. He threatened to arrest me just for saying that the colonel lives here. He threatened to arrest Mr. Williams for the same reason. He put his hand on his gun multiple times. He made this poor man sit on the curb like a criminal. It was disgusting. Other neighbors began speaking up too. I recorded everything, Tommy Johnson said, holding up his phone. I can send it to you. I recorded it too, said another neighbor. And me, said a third. Lisa looked around at all the phones. She knew what this meant. By tonight, this would be on social media. By tomorrow, it would be on the news. The department would be under fire. There would be protests. There would be investigations, and honestly, Lisa thought they deserved it. She turned to the colonel. Sir, would you be willing to come to the station and give a formal statement? The colonel looked at his house. He looked at his wife standing in the doorway, still crying quietly. He looked at his scattered belongings on the driveway. He looked at his peaceful Sunday morning, completely destroyed. Yes, Sergeant, he said quietly. I'll give a statement. But not today. Today, I want to be with my family. Today I want to try to explain to my 12-year-old daughter why her father was treated like a criminal in his own driveway. Lisa nodded. I understand. Would tomorrow work? Tomorrow is fine. Lisa handed him her card. My personal cell phone number is on there. If you need anything, call me directly, anytime, day or night. The colonel took the card. He put it in his wallet next to the smudged photo of his daughter. Patricia came out of the house again. She ran to her husband and hugged him tightly. She was shaking. The colonel held her, and for the first time his composure cracked just a little. His eyes got wet, but he blinked the tears away. Lisa watched them and felt her own eyes sting. This was a decorated military officer, a man who had served his country for 20 years, a man who deserved respect and honor, and he had been humiliated in front of his wife, his neighbors, and eventually, the whole country. This was more than just a bad stop. This was more than just a mistake. This was everything wrong with the system, all captured on video, all about to explode into public view. And in his patrol car, Derek sat with his hands on the steering wheel, finally beginning to realize just how badly he had messed up. Sergeant Lisa Rodriguez stood in the driveway of 2847 Maple Drive, her mind working through everything she had just witnessed. She had been a police officer for 15 years. She had seen a lot in that time. But this situation made her angrier than she had been in a long time. The colonel and his wife, Patricia, stood together near their front door. Patricia's arm was wrapped around her husband's waist. She was still shaking. The colonel stood tall, but Lisa could see the exhaustion in his face. The emotional toll of what had just happened was written all over him. Lisa turned to Officer Chen. Sarah, I need you to start collecting statements from witnesses. Get their names, contact information, and written accounts of what they saw. Make sure you get copies of their video recordings too. Sarah nodded, looking relieved to have a clear task. She walked toward Mrs. Chen first, pulling out her notepad. Lisa then walked over to Derek's patrol car. She opened the driver's door without asking. Derek sat there staring straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. Officer Mills, give me your body camera, Lisa said. Her voice was cold and professional. Derek's hand went to the camera on his chest. His face showed panic for just a second. Sergeant, I can explain. Your camera, now. Derek unclipped it and handed it over. Lisa took it and immediately checked the indicator light. Her jaw clenched. You didn't turn it on. I forgot. Things were happening fast. You forgot. Lisa's voice was flat. You responded to a call, confronted a citizen, detained him, threatened multiple witnesses, put your hand on your weapon multiple times, and you forgot to turn on your body camera. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. They both knew he hadn't forgotten. He had chosen not to turn it on, and they both knew why. Get out of the car, Lisa ordered. Derek got out slowly. He stood there trying to make himself look bigger, more authoritative. But he just looked small and guilty. Do you know who that man is? Lisa asked, pointing at the colonel. He's Colonel James Patterson. He's a decorated officer in the United States Army. He has 20 years of service. He has a Bronze Star. He has a Distinguished Service Medal. He has jumped out of airplanes into enemy territory. He has led soldiers in combat. He has given more to this country than most people could ever imagine. Derek's face was getting red again, but this time from shame, not anger. And you, Lisa continued, her voice getting quieter but more intense. You made him sit on a curb in his own driveway. You threw his wallet on the ground. You stepped on a picture of his daughter. You threatened his wife. You threatened elderly neighbors who tried to help him. You put your hand on your weapon when he was completely unarmed and cooperative. I was following procedure. You were not following procedure. Lisa's voice finally rose. Procedure is to verify information. Procedure is to run license plates. Procedure is to call in IDs. Procedure is to use the minimum force necessary. What you did was profile a citizen based on how he looked. What you did was escalate a peaceful situation into a potential violent encounter. What you did was abuse your authority and bring shame on this department. Derek tried one more time. He matched the description. What description? Tell me the exact description from the call. Derek hesitated. Male suspicious person in a nice neighborhood. That's not a description. That's barely anything. You never asked dispatch for more details. You never confirmed there was an actual crime. You made assumptions, and those assumptions were based on nothing but your own prejudices. Tommy Johnson walked up to them. He was still holding his phone. Excuse me, Sergeant. I want to make sure you know that I recorded everything from the moment the first officer started yelling. I have the whole thing, and I've already uploaded it to the cloud, so even if someone tries to take my phone, the video is safe. Lisa looked at the teenager with respect. That's very smart, son. Please send a copy to Officer Chen, and thank you for documenting what happened. That man served our country, Tommy said, looking at Derek with disgust. My grandfather served too. He was in Vietnam. He told me about how soldiers were treated when they came home, how people didn't respect them, how people judged them. He said we should always honor people who serve. But you didn't honor him. You treated him like garbage. Derek's face went from red to pale. Even he couldn't defend himself against a teenager's moral clarity. Tommy walked away, leaving Derek standing there feeling smaller than ever. Lisa turned back to Derek. Go wait in your car. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anything. Don't make any phone calls. I'll deal with you after I finish here. Derek got back in his car. Through the windshield, Lisa could see him staring at nothing, finally realizing how bad this was going to be. Sarah was moving through the crowd of neighbors collecting statements. Lisa watched her work. The rookie was thorough and professional. She asked good questions. She listened carefully. She treated the witnesses with respect. This is what good police work looks like, Lisa thought. Mr. Williams approached Lisa. He was the older man who Derek had almost arrested. Sergeant, I want you to know that this isn't the first time I've seen this kind of thing. I've lived here for 25 years. This is a good neighborhood, but since we got our first few black families moving in about 5 years ago, I've noticed patrol cars coming by more often. I've seen them stop people for no reason. I've seen them ask questions that they never asked white residents. Lisa pulled out her notebook. Can you give me specific examples? Mr. Williams did. He talked about 3 other incidents over the past 2 years. Each time, black residents were stopped and questioned in situations where white residents never would have been bothered. Lisa wrote down every detail. Mrs. Chen joined them. I want to add something too. 2 months ago, before the colonel moved in, we had a white couple looking at that house. They were clearly real estate investors taking measurements and photos. A patrol car drove by and just waved at them. Didn't stop. Didn't ask questions. But the colonel, who actually lives there, gets harassed for washing his own car. Lisa's anger grew with each story. This wasn't just one bad officer having a bad day. This was a pattern. This was systemic. She walked back over to where the colonel stood with his wife. Patricia had finally stopped shaking, but her eyes were red from crying. Sir, ma'am, I need to ask you some more questions if that's okay, Lisa said gently. Of course, the colonel replied. Lisa opened her notebook to a fresh page. You mentioned this was the 3rd time you've been stopped in 6 weeks. Can you tell me about the other 2 times? The colonel took a breath and began. The first time was September 20th, around 7 in the evening. I was checking my mail at the end of the driveway. A patrol car pulled up and asked what I was doing. I explained I lived here and was getting my mail. The officer asked to see my ID. I showed it to him. He looked at it for a long time, then asked if anyone could verify I lived here. My wife came out and confirmed it. He finally left, but he sat in his car at the end of the street for another 10 minutes watching our house. Patricia nodded. I remember that night. We had just finished dinner. Our daughter asked why the police were watching us. We didn't know what to tell her. The second time was October 18th, the colonel continued. I was bringing in groceries from my car. Multiple bags. I had just gotten home from the base. I was in my uniform, my military uniform, and still a patrol car stopped and asked what I was doing. Lisa stopped writing. You were in uniform? Yes, ma'am. Full dress uniform. My rank was clearly visible. My name tape was visible. Everything. Lisa felt sick to her stomach. And they still stopped you? Yes. The officer asked if I had permission to be on the property. I told him I lived here. He asked if I could prove it. I had to go inside and get my mortgage papers to show him. Patricia added, that officer was different from today's officer, but he had the same attitude. Like my husband was guilty of something just for existing in this neighborhood. Lisa wrote everything down with shaking hands. She was furious, but she kept her professional composure. Did you file complaints about either incident? The colonel shook his head. No, I'm in the military. I know how institutions work. I know how the ranks close around their own. I figured filing a complaint would just make things worse, make me more of a target. And I convinced him not to, Patricia said quietly. I told him to just let it go, to not make waves. We were new in the neighborhood. I didn't want trouble. Her voice broke. But maybe if we had said something, today wouldn't have happened. Lisa put her hand on Patricia's shoulder. Ma'am, this is not your fault. This is not your husband's fault. This is the fault of officers who abuse their power, and I promise you, I will make sure this is investigated properly. A window opened on the second floor of the house. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, looked out. She had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. But right now she just looked scared and confused. The colonel looked up and saw his daughter. His face softened. It's okay, baby. Go back to bed. Daddy, why were the police here? Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Everything's fine now. But everything wasn't fine, and the little girl was old enough to know it. She closed the window but didn't leave. Lisa could see her face pressed against the glass, watching. She saw it, didn't she? Lisa asked quietly. The colonel nodded, his jaw tight. She was supposed to be asleep. But the sirens probably woke her up. She saw her father sitting on a curb like a criminal. She saw a police officer threaten her mother. That's what she'll remember about today. Patricia wiped her eyes. How do we explain this to her? How do we tell her that her father, who has served this country with honor, who has medals and commendations, was treated like this? Lisa didn't have an answer. There was no good answer to that question. Sarah came back over with a stack of written statements and a list of phone numbers. Sergeant, I have statements from 14 witnesses. All of them corroborate the same story. The colonel was cooperative throughout. Officer Mills was aggressive and escalated the situation unnecessarily. Several witnesses mentioned that Mills put his hand on his weapon multiple times. 3 witnesses said they felt Mills was profiling the colonel based on race. Lisa took the statements and flipped through them. They were all consistent. They all painted the same picture. This was going to be impossible for Derek to defend. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. I ran the call history. The suspicious person call came in at 10:47 a.m. It was anonymous, made from a burner phone. The caller gave almost no details. Just said there was a suspicious person in the neighborhood who didn't belong. No description of clothing. No description of activity. No mention of any crime. It was the vaguest call possible. And Mills responded code 3? Lisa asked, meaning with lights and sirens. Yes, Sergeant. He chose to respond code 3 to a vague suspicious person call with no crime in progress. Lisa shook her head. Everything about this stop had been wrong from the start. Derek had gone in with assumptions and had looked for any excuse to justify them. She turned back to the colonel. Sir, I know you've been through a terrible experience today, but I want you to know that not all officers are like Mills. Most of us joined this job to serve and protect all citizens equally. What happened today goes against everything we're supposed to stand for. The colonel looked at her for a long moment. Sergeant, I believe you. I believe you're a good officer. I believe Officer Chen is trying to be a good officer. But the system protected Mills until today. How many complaints did he have? Lisa hesitated. She wasn't supposed to share personnel information. But this man deserved honesty. 17, the colonel's eyes widened. 17 complaints and he was still on the street? Yes, sir. And that's something I'm going to address with my superiors. The colonel nodded slowly. I hope you do. Because if this happened to me, a colonel with rank and education and resources, what's happening to people who don't have those things? What's happening to young black men who don't have military credentials? What's happening to people who can't afford lawyers or don't know their rights? It was a question that hung in the air, heavy and important. Lisa knew the answer, and it made her ashamed. By Monday morning, the world knew what had happened on Maple Drive. Tommy Johnson had posted his video to social media Sunday evening. Within 3 hours, it had 50,000 views. By midnight, it had 1 million views. By Monday morning, it had been shared across every major platform. The video was clear. It was damning. It showed everything. It showed Officer Mills jumping out of his car, already aggressive. It showed him yelling at the colonel. It showed the colonel staying calm and respectful. It showed Mills refusing to listen to neighbors. It showed him threatening Mrs. Chen, threatening Mr. Williams, putting his hand on his gun repeatedly. It showed the colonel sitting on the curb with dignity, while Derek stood over him like a bully. The video went viral. Millions of people watched it. Thousands commented. The comments were angry. People were outraged. News organizations picked it up. By Monday morning, camera crews were on Maple Drive. Colonel James Patterson woke up to find reporters camped outside his house. His phone was flooded with messages. Some were from friends and family offering support. Some were from journalists asking for interviews. Some were from strangers, both supportive and hateful. Patricia kept the curtains closed. She kept their daughter, Jennifer, home from school. The family stayed inside while the world exploded around them. At the police station, things were chaos. The phone lines were jammed with calls. People demanding answers. People demanding justice. People demanding that Officer Mills be fired. Chief of Police Robert Morrison sat in his office watching the video for the 10th time. Each time he watched it, he felt worse. This was a nightmare, a public relations disaster. But more than that, it was a moral failure. His department had failed. He had failed. Sergeant Lisa Rodriguez knocked on his door at 8 in the morning. She came in carrying a thick file folder. Her face was grim. Chief, we need to talk about Officer Mills. Chief Morrison gestured to a chair. I've been watching the video. It's bad, Lisa, really bad. It's worse than the video shows, Lisa said. She opened the file folder. I pulled Mills's complete personnel record last night. The colonel said this was the 3rd time he'd been stopped. I verified it. Mills stopped him twice before. Both times were in his own neighborhood. Both times for no valid reason. The chief rubbed his temples. He felt a headache forming. Go on. Mills has 17 formal complaints filed against him over 5 years. 17. All of them involve accusations of racial profiling, excessive force, or aggressive behavior. None of them were properly investigated. What do you mean, not properly investigated? Lisa pulled out papers. Most were marked as unfounded or unsubstantiated after minimal investigation. 3 were investigated by Mills's direct supervisor, who happens to be his friend from the academy. They had drinks together every Friday. 4 complaints were closed because the complainant stopped responding, but I talked to 2 of them last night. They said they were intimidated into dropping their complaints. Chief Morrison felt sick. Intimidated by who? By Mills. He would drive past their houses. He would stop them again for minor traffic violations. He would make their lives difficult until they gave up. Do you have proof of this? I have witness statements. I have patrol logs showing Mills drove past certain addresses repeatedly. And I have this. Lisa pulled out another document. 3 years ago, a young black man named Marcus Thompson filed a complaint against Mills. Marcus claimed Mills stopped him for no reason, searched his car without consent, and used excessive force. The complaint was dismissed as unfounded. Last week, Marcus was stopped by Mills again. Mills gave him a ticket for a broken taillight that wasn't actually broken. Marcus was too scared to fight it. The chief looked at the documents. The pattern was clear, and it was disgusting. Why wasn't I informed about this pattern? Because complaints were handled at lower levels and never flagged as part of a pattern. Each one was treated as an isolated incident. Nobody connected the dots. Or if they did, they chose not to report it. There was a knock on the door. It was the chief's assistant. Sir, the mayor is on line 1. She wants to talk about the Maple Drive incident. Also, there are about 20 reporters in the lobby asking for a statement. Chief Morrison closed his eyes. Tell the mayor I'll call her back in 10 minutes. Tell the reporters we'll have a press conference at noon. The assistant left. The chief looked at Lisa. What's your recommendation? Mills needs to be suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. We need to review every stop he's ever made. We need to contact everyone who filed a complaint and reopen those cases. And we need to publicly apologize to Colonel Patterson and his family. Agreed. What about Officer Chen? Chen tried to stop Mills multiple times. She called for a supervisor. She collected evidence properly. She told the truth in her statement even though it hurt her partner. In my opinion, she acted correctly throughout. The chief nodded. Make sure she knows she did the right thing. Young officers need to know that speaking up is the right thing to do, even when it's hard. Lisa stood up. There's one more thing, Chief. This is bigger than just Mills. We need to look at our training. We need to look at our culture. We need to look at why 17 complaints didn't trigger any alarm bells. We failed Colonel Patterson, but he's just the one with a video that went viral. How many others have we failed who didn't have cameras? It was the same question the colonel had asked. And it haunted Chief Morrison, because he knew the answer. Too many. Way too many. Across town, Derek Mills sat in his living room. His wife had left for work that morning without speaking to him. His teenage son had looked at him with disgust at breakfast. Derek had tried to explain, tried to justify his actions, but his son had just shaken his head and walked away. Now Derek sat alone, watching his career crumble on television. Every news channel was covering the story. Every channel was showing the video. Every channel was asking how this could happen. Derek's phone rang. It was his union representative. Derek, don't talk to anyone. Don't post anything on social media. Don't respond to any messages. Get a lawyer. This is serious. I was just doing my job, Derek said. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Derek, I've seen the video. Everyone has seen the video. This is going to be hard to defend. That man you stopped is a decorated military officer. You made him sit on a curb in his own driveway. There are 14 witnesses saying you were aggressive and out of line. Your body camera was off. This looks really bad. Derek hung up. He knew it looked bad. It was bad. But he still couldn't quite accept that he was wrong. In his mind, he had been doing his job. He had been protecting a nice neighborhood. The fact that everyone else saw it differently didn't compute. His phone buzzed again. It was a text from his supervisor. Effective immediately. You are suspended without pay pending investigation. Do not come to the station. Do not contact witnesses. Do not speak to the media. You will be contacted about a formal hearing. Derek read the text 3 times. Suspended. Without pay. His mortgage was due in 2 weeks. His son needed new football equipment. His wife's car needed repairs. How were they going to manage? But more than the money, the suspension felt like shame. It felt like failure. Derek had always seen himself as a good cop. A strong cop. Someone who kept people safe. Now everyone was calling him a racist, a bully, an abuser of power. Was that who he really was? At noon, Chief Morrison stood in front of a room full of reporters. Camera flashes went off constantly. Microphones were shoved toward him from every direction. Good afternoon. I'm here to address the incident that occurred yesterday on Maple Drive. First, I want to apologize directly to Colonel James Patterson and his family. What happened yesterday was wrong. It should never have happened. Colonel Patterson is a decorated officer who has served our country with honor for 20 years. He deserved to be treated with respect. Instead, he was humiliated in his own driveway. A reporter shouted out, "What about Officer Mills? Will he be fired?" Officer Mills has been suspended without pay pending a full investigation. If the investigation confirms what appears in the video and witness statements, appropriate disciplinary action will be taken, up to and including termination. Another reporter. How many complaints has Mills received? Chief Morrison hesitated, then decided on honesty. Officer Mills has had 17 complaints filed against him over 5 years. We are reviewing all of those complaints to determine if they were properly investigated. The room erupted. 17 complaints. The number shocked people. How could an officer with 17 complaints still be on the street? Chief Morrison raised his hand for quiet. I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking it too. Our system failed. We failed to identify a pattern. We failed to take action before something like this happened. That's on us. That's on me. And we're going to fix it. What changes will you make? A reporter asked. We're implementing mandatory retraining on bias and de-escalation for all officers. We're reviewing our complaint process to ensure complaints are properly tracked and patterns are identified. We're creating an independent review board to oversee investigations of serious complaints, and we're reaching out to community leaders to rebuild trust. Have you spoken to Colonel Patterson? Not yet. I plan to visit him personally this afternoon to apologize in person. The press conference went on for another 30 minutes. Chief Morrison answered every question as honestly as he could. He knew his answers wouldn't satisfy everyone. He knew people were angry. He knew trust had been broken. But he also knew that honesty was the only way forward. That afternoon, Chief Morrison drove to Maple Drive. He came alone, not in a patrol car, but in his personal vehicle. He wore his dress uniform. He wanted to show respect. He knocked on the colonel's door. Patricia answered. Her eyes were red and tired. She looked at the chief with suspicion. Mrs. Patterson, I'm Chief Morrison. I was hoping I could speak with you and your husband. Patricia didn't invite him in. She called over her shoulder. James, the police chief is here. The colonel came to the door. He was wearing jeans and a military t-shirt. He looked at the chief with no expression. Sir, Chief Morrison said, I came to apologize in person. What happened yesterday was inexcusable. I've watched the video. I've read the witness statements. I've reviewed Officer Mills's record. You were wronged. Your family was wronged. And I'm deeply sorry. The colonel studied the chief's face for a long moment. You're sorry. That's good. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Sorry doesn't erase the memory of my daughter watching through the window as her father was treated like a criminal. No, sir. It doesn't. Nothing I say can undo what happened. But I want you to know that we're taking action. Mills is suspended. We're investigating all his prior complaints. We're implementing new training and oversight. We're trying to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. That's what you should have done before, the colonel said quietly, before he had 17 complaints, before he stopped me 3 times, before he humiliated me in front of my family and neighbors. Chief Morrison had no defense for that. You're right, sir. We should have. The colonel looked past the chief at the media truck still parked on the street. This is national news now. My face is everywhere. My family's privacy is gone. My daughter is scared to go to school because kids are talking about it. All because one of your officers decided I didn't belong in my own neighborhood. I know my words aren't enough, the chief said, but I promise you we will do better. The colonel nodded slowly. I hope you mean that, because I'm not the only one this happens to. I'm just the one with cameras recording it. Somewhere right now, someone else is being profiled. Someone else is being harassed. Someone else is being treated as less than human. And nobody's recording it. It was true, and it was devastating. The chief knew it. The colonel knew it. Everyone watching the news knew it. Justice for one viral video didn't mean justice for everyone. 3 days after the incident, the colonel agreed to do one television interview. Just one. He chose a respected journalist known for fair reporting. The interview would air on national television during prime time. The colonel sat in his living room wearing his full dress uniform. His medals gleamed on his chest. Patricia sat beside him holding his hand. The interviewer, a woman named Janet Williams, sat across from them with a notepad. Colonel Patterson, thank you for agreeing to speak with us.
Can you tell me what was going through your mind when Officer Mills first approached you?
The colonel took a breath. Honestly, my first thought was confusion. I was washing my car. It was a peaceful morning. When the patrol car pulled up so aggressively with the tires squealing, I thought maybe there was an emergency. Maybe they needed help with something. It never occurred to me that I was the reason they were there. When did you realize you were the target? When Officer Mills started shouting at me, when he demanded to know what I was doing there. I've been stopped before by police, usually for traffic violations, minor things, but this was different. This was hostile from the first second. Janet leaned forward. This wasn't the first time you were stopped in your neighborhood. Can you talk about that? Patricia squeezed her husband's hand. He continued. I've been stopped 3 times in 6 weeks. Each time for no reason. Each time I had to prove I belonged in my own neighborhood. The first 2 times I stayed calm. I showed my ID, I answered questions. I didn't make a fuss because I didn't want trouble. I thought maybe if I just cooperated it would stop. But it didn't stop, no. It got worse. And Sunday morning it became dangerous. When Officer Mills put his hand on his gun, I realized I could die. Right there in my driveway, I could be shot in front of my wife and daughter for the crime of washing my car while black. The words hung in the air. Millions of people watching at home felt the weight of them. Janet asked, "You served this country for 20 years. You've been deployed multiple times. You've earned numerous commendations. How does it feel to be treated this way in the country you defended?" The colonel's jaw tightened. He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I've jumped out of airplanes into combat zones. I've led soldiers through dangerous situations. I've made decisions that saved lives. I love this country. I believe in what it's supposed to stand for. But Sunday morning I realized that none of that matters to some people. My rank doesn't matter. My service doesn't matter. My medals don't matter. All they see is my skin color." Patricia spoke up for the first time. "Our daughter saw everything from her window. She's 12 years old. She asked me why people would treat her daddy that way. How do you explain to a child that her father, who is a hero, who has served his country with honor, was treated like a criminal? What does that teach her about her place in this world?" Janet turned to Patricia. "What would you like people watching to understand?" "I want them to understand that this isn't just about one bad officer. This is about a system that allows officers like Mills to keep their jobs despite 17 complaints. This is about our family not feeling safe in our own home. This is about my daughter being afraid of police officers now, when she should feel protected by them. This is about all the families who go through this every day without cameras recording it." The interview continued for another 20 minutes. The colonel talked about the need for accountability, about better training, about independent oversight, about community policing. He spoke clearly and powerfully like the leader he was. When the interview aired that evening, 30 million people watched it. Social media exploded again. People were moved by the colonel's dignity, by Patricia's pain, by the injustice of it all. Politicians began weighing in. Some called for immediate police reform. Others defended law enforcement while condemning Mills specifically. The conversation was happening at every level of society. In Oakmont Hills, something else was happening too. The neighbors were organizing. Mrs. Chen had called a community meeting. Over 100 people showed up, gathering in the local community center. The room was packed. People of all races and ages came together with one purpose: supporting the Patterson family and demanding change. Mrs. Chen stood at the front of the room. "We've all seen what happened on our street. It was wrong. It was shameful, and we need to make sure it never happens again." Mr. Williams stood up. "I've been talking to other longtime residents. This isn't new. We've seen this pattern before with other black families. We just didn't speak up loudly enough. That changes now." Tommy Johnson raised his hand. "My generation isn't going to accept this. We're going to record everything. We're going to speak up. We're going to make noise until things change." One by one, neighbors stood and spoke. Some shared their own experiences with police. Some talked about their fears. Some offered concrete suggestions for change. The energy in the room was powerful. They decided to create a neighborhood watch program, not to watch for criminals, but to watch the watchers. They would document every police interaction in the neighborhood. They would support anyone who was stopped unfairly. They would go to city council meetings and demand accountability. Mrs. Chen announced, "We're also organizing a community gathering to honor Colonel Patterson and his family. We want to show them that they're welcome here, that we support them, that this neighborhood stands with them." The gathering was planned for the following Saturday. Word spread quickly. What started as a small neighborhood event grew into something much bigger. Meanwhile, the investigation into Officer Mills was progressing. Internal Affairs had interviewed all 17 people who had filed complaints against him. They had reviewed dashcam footage from dozens of his stops. They had analyzed patterns in his reports. The evidence was overwhelming. Mills had targeted black residents disproportionately. He had used aggressive tactics unnecessarily. He had lied in several reports to justify his actions. The violations were serious and numerous. 2 weeks after the incident, Derek Mills was officially fired from the police department. His termination letter cited multiple policy violations, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming an officer. He would also face potential criminal charges for false imprisonment and assault. Mills's union initially tried to defend him, but when they saw the full evidence, they backed down. Even they couldn't defend the indefensible. Sarah Chen, the rookie officer, was commended for her courage in speaking up. She was assigned a new training officer and continued her career. She had learned early what it meant to choose integrity over loyalty to a bad partner. That lesson would serve her well throughout her career. Saturday arrived, bright and sunny like the Sunday this had all started. But this time, the scene on Maple Drive was completely different. The street was filled with people, hundreds of them. Neighbors, supporters, activists, veterans in uniform, families with children. They came with signs that said, "We support Colonel Patterson and Black Lives Matter and Justice for All and thank you for your service." The colonel and his family stood on their front lawn, overwhelmed by the turnout. Patricia was crying, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Jennifer, their daughter, held a bouquet of flowers that Mrs. Chen had given her. A makeshift stage had been set up in the street. Local leaders spoke. Veterans spoke. Community activists spoke. They all spoke about justice, about change, about hope for a better future. Then Mrs. Chen invited the colonel to speak. He stepped up to the microphone, looking at the sea of faces before him. "So many people, so much support. Thank you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for standing with my family. What happened 2 weeks ago was the worst day of my life, not because of the physical danger, but because it challenged everything I believed about this country." He paused, collecting himself. "But today, seeing all of you here, I'm reminded of what's good about America. You're what's good. Your willingness to stand up against injustice, your refusal to look away, your determination to make things better. That's the America I served. That's the America I believe in." The crowd cheered. The colonel continued. "What happened to me happens to too many people. I was lucky. I had cameras recording. I had supportive neighbors. I had resources and education and rank. But there are people who don't have those things. They suffer in silence. They're stopped and harassed and humiliated, and nobody records it. Nobody speaks up. Nobody cares," he pointed to the crowd. "But you care. And that matters. Real change doesn't happen just because one officer gets fired. Real change happens when communities come together and demand better. When good officers speak up against bad ones. When witnesses record injustice. When people refuse to be silent." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. "I'm not angry anymore," the colonel said. "I'm determined. Determined to use my voice to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Determined to work with police departments that want to do better. Determined to teach my daughter that even when the world is unfair, we don't give up. We fight, we organize. We demand justice." The crowd erupted in applause. People were crying. People were cheering. The energy was electric. After the speeches, there was food and music. Children played in the street. Neighbors talked and laughed together. The Patterson family was surrounded by people offering support and love. Officer Sarah Chen showed up off duty. She approached the colonel nervously. "Sir, I wanted to apologize. I should have done more to stop my partner. I should have—" The colonel held up his hand. "You called for a supervisor. You collected evidence honestly. You told the truth even when it was hard. You did what was right. Don't ever apologize for that." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sir. I promise to always be the kind of officer you deserved that day." "That's all any of us can ask," the colonel said. As the sun began to set on Maple Drive, the crowd started to thin. But the sense of community remained. Something had changed. Not just in this neighborhood, but across the country. The video had sparked a conversation. The colonel's interview had given that conversation depth. And this gathering had shown that change was possible. The colonel stood in his driveway as the last few neighbors left. He looked at his house, his car, his street. This was his home. He had earned the right to be here. And now finally it felt like home. Patricia came out and wrapped her arms around him. "Are you okay?" she asked. He nodded. "I am. For the first time in 2 weeks, I really am." Jennifer ran up and hugged both her parents. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen said you're a hero." The colonel smiled and picked up his daughter. "A hero is just someone who does what's right even when it's hard. Remember that, sweetheart. Always do what's right." "I will, Daddy, I promise." The Patterson family went inside their home. They closed the door on a day that had started with injustice and humiliation, but had transformed into something hopeful. Something powerful. Change was slow. Change was hard. But change was possible. Across the country, police departments began reviewing their policies. Some implemented new training programs. Some created civilian review boards. Some fired officers who had histories of complaints. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough until the problem was fully solved. But it was a start, and it started with a colonel washing his car on a Sunday morning, with neighbors who refused to look away, with a rookie officer who chose truth over loyalty, with a community that came together, with a family that turned pain into purpose. The video of that Sunday morning would never be forgotten. It would be shown in police academies as an example of everything not to do. It would be discussed in classrooms as a lesson about injustice and courage. It would be shared on social media whenever someone needed to be reminded why this work mattered. But more importantly, it led to real change. Not perfect change, not complete change, but real measurable improvement in how some officers approached their work and how some communities held them accountable. The colonel continued his military career. He rose to even higher ranks. He spoke frequently about his experience, always with dignity and grace. He became an advocate for police reform while also supporting good officers who did the job right. Patricia went back to her work as a teacher. She taught her students about civil rights, about standing up for what's right, about using their voices for good. Jennifer grew up watching her parents turn tragedy into triumph. She learned that injustice should make you angry, but that anger should fuel action, not hatred. She learned that change was possible when people worked together. And every Sunday morning, the colonel washed his car in his driveway. It was his ritual now, his statement, his quiet act of resistance and resilience. He was home. He belonged, and nobody would ever make him feel otherwise again. The fight for justice continued. It always would. But on Maple Drive, on that one street in that one neighborhood, a community had come together to say, "Not here. Not anymore. Never again," and that made all the difference.